Have you ever returned to your family's land expecting quiet, only to be hit with buried fees, forged permits, and a plot to steal your water? In this episode, Jake Carter comes home to 30,000 acres of Carter Lake and finds a powerful HOA squeezing neighbors dry for 2 decades. He uncovers a pre-statehood deed from 1891, exposes a secret pipeline feeding a luxury resort, and turns the tables on an overreaching board and a ruthless developer. So if you like stories like this, like and subscribe for more. The gravel crunched under my tires as I rolled down Carter Lake Road for the first time in 12 years. Pine trees arched overhead, and the unbroken blue of 3,000 acres of lake water stretched out before me, water my Uncle Ray guarded like a treasure. After 20 years as an engineer, I'd yearned for the calm of these shores. I stepped out of my truck, breathed in the crisp air, and 12 minutes later I was in the crosshairs. A white Escalade glided up behind me, dust kicking up in its wake. A woman with perfect hair and a designer blazer stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Jake Carter?" she said as if she already knew the answer. She slapped a stack of papers on my windshield. "Violation of Articles 4B, 7C, and 9F. Unpaid access fees, unpermitted dock, unauthorized mooring. You must submit environmental forms immediately or face daily fines and liens." I stared at her. "This is my family's lake." She tilted her head, sympathy in her tone. "It's community managed. As an adjacent resident, you owe monthly fees. Your uncle fell behind years ago." I moved between her and the dock. "My family has held these waters since 1891. I don't owe you anything." Her sunglasses flashed. "Records say otherwise. Compliance is mandatory." She stomped back to her SUV, leaving a red-stamped delinquent notice fluttering on the glass. I carried that packet inside my uncle's cabin and spread the papers across the kitchen table. 2 decades of backdated aquatic ecosystem stabilization charges, shoreline maintenance fees, access charges, every demand addressed to Uncle Ray, all unopened or stamped rejected in his handwriting. He'd never paid a cent. They'd never dared push beyond letters. Why? I couldn't sleep, so at first light I drove into town to see Sheriff Morales. In his cramped office, I dropped the HOA demand on his desk. 10 minutes in, his jaw was tight. "Bethany Crowell's been charging residents for water access ever since I took this job. She calls it environmental upkeep." "Water she doesn't own," I said. He nodded. "She only goes after people she thinks won't fight back. You're the wrong Carter." He suggested I search my uncle's attic for clues. Back at the cabin, the attic smelled of cedar and dust. Boxes labeled in Uncle Ray's neat script held tax returns, fishing logs, contractor receipts, and a rusted metal cash box. Inside were envelopes, dozens of HOA notices, all rejected. At the bottom, a brittle note in Ray's handwriting. "Jake, if anything happens to me, check the deed, the real deed. They'll come for the water. Don't let them." The next hour, I unfurled every box until I found a leather-bound folio sealed with a rusty clasp. Inside, yellowed pages, territorial government seals, and a folded 1891 water rights grant pending statehood. Carter family control of the lake, watershed, and flow gates, long before any HOA existed. My pulse raced. My uncle had the smoking gun. I called Sheriff Morales. "I found it. The deed. They've been running a $3,000 a month racket on water they never owned." He warned, "People who profit that long don't give it up easily." That afternoon, Bethany's second volley arrived. Another compliance notice threatening lien proceedings in 72 hours. They were desperate. I opened the folio and booked a meeting with Sarah Whitfield, the land rights attorney known for dismantling HOA boards. Sarah's office was stacked with case files. When she saw the 1891 grant, disbelief flickered across her face. This supersedes every modern claim, HOA bylaws, zoning codes, environmental ordinances, unless revoked by statute, and it hasn't been. She tapped her pen. All those dock permits, fees, mooring charges, they're invalid. And if she used forged signatures on environmental approvals? Felony fraud, she said quietly. Just then, Sheriff Morales stuck his head in with more HOA notices from the station. Sarah scanned them. They're fabricating entire departments: Water Regulation Committee, Environmental Oversight Division. None exist. Morales sighed. She targets newcomers, retirees, people too intimidated to fight. Sarah laid out the strategy. File a notice of challenge that night, demand HOA financials, expose the fraud. Before dawn, I found county inspectors at my dock, building, environmental, and septic teams, all responding to anonymous complaints. They measured beams, tested shoreline erosion, probed my septic fields, every result perfect. I recorded their reluctant admissions, no violations, all complaints fabricated. Sheriff Morales told me the calls came from one number tied to 13 other bogus reports aimed at residents who pushed back against the HOA. That evening, Sarah dropped by. 3 county agencies in one morning, that's coordination. Bethany's panicking. She showed me spreadsheets of phantom environmental vendors in the HOA budget, shell companies she created to launder fee money. Under transparency law, they must hand over communications, contracts, ledgers, everything within 72 hours once served. She pressed a formal demand into my hand. We drove to the Lakeshore Community Authority office, an upscale home on the shore with a polish sign out front. Bethany opened the door before we knocked, smug. "Mr. Carter, Miss Whitfield, I assume you're here about your missing forms." Sarah stepped forward. "This is a disclosure request for all HOA finances, vendor agreements, and internal emails dating back 7 years. It's state law." Bethany's face flickered. She snatched the papers. "This is harassment." I leaned in. "You don't get to run a private lake economy on water you didn't own. You don't forge permits, and you don't bully the rightful owner." Across the driveway, I spotted a window tint peeling on an SUV. Inside sat Marcus Hale, developer extraordinaire. He emerged smooth. "Jake Carter, I hear there's an issue about community water." "No issue," I said. "Theft." He smirked. "Careful with accusations." I held up the formal request. 72 hours, Bethany. That's the law." The next morning, state investigators arrived with my deeds in hand. I hiked east along the shoreline with GPS sensors from my old engineering days. Beneath a tangle of brush, I uncovered an iron valve marked Carter Flow Number 1, 1891, the lake's original control point. I set the sensors and watched live readings, steady spring inflow, except a sudden drop in pressure whenever the resort filled up. Someone had tapped a hidden pipeline. At the water's edge, a gray-haired woman with a fishing rod stepped out of the shadows. "Mavis Lane," she said. "Ray and I patrolled the shore when the HOA first sniffed around." I showed her the data. "They're draining my lake." Her eyes darkened. "That developer, Marcus Hale, he promised her authority if she gave him water for his project." I took the readings to Sarah. "They're siphoning at a commercial rate." She nodded. "Unauthorized diversion, forged permits, criminal." Sheriff Morales arrived with county maps and a revoked hydrological permit for a temporary diversion line. It was signed by Hale Development and approved with Dr. Adrian Lawn's signature, a consultant who didn't exist. They'd lied for years, pulled your water into a private resort while warning you of drought. We loaded evidence into Sarah's laptop: deed, pipeline blueprint, flow logs, HOA bank statements showing shell transactions to Hale's accounts. We filed criminal referrals with the Attorney General's office and State Environmental Board that afternoon. That evening, Bethany's board hastily called an emergency HOA meeting at the pavilion. Rows of chairs, a projector, poster boards with doctored photos of my dock. She planned to seize the lake under the guise of environmental crisis. Sarah Morales and I walked in as she tapped the mic. "We must vote to assume temporary control of Carter Lake to protect property values," she announced. I rose, every camera swung to me. "Point of order," Bethany sneered. "You don't have the floor." "I do." I held up the original 1891 deed. "This lake is permanently excluded from association authority. Any vote you take is void." Sarah clicked to a slide showing the pipeline schematic. "And this is the secret water line diverting your lake to a private resort, funded by your drought fees and approved with forged reports." Patrons gasped. Phones rose. Bethany and Marcus froze. Every excuse vanished under the weight of the deed and hard data. Within days, the AG's office announced a felony probe into fraudulent environmental permits, unauthorized water diversion, and embezzlement of HOA funds. The HOA's accounts were frozen. Marcus's resort suffered water shortages. Bethany Crowell and Marcus Hale faced criminal charges. In the wake of the upheaval, neighbors returned to the lake. Kayaks, fishing poles, laughter drifting across the cove. We formed the Carter Lake Conservation Trust, a nonprofit co-managed by residents for transparent lake stewardship. Mavis chairs the board, Sarah advises legally, and Sheriff Morales liaises with regulators. We installed real-time water monitoring stations and teach local schools about water rights and ecology. Late one summer evening, I stood on the old dock, lanterns twinkling around the shore. Families gathered for a sunset paddle. Peace at last, earned by the deed my uncle saved and by standing up for what's right. If you'd like more stories like these, please like and subscribe.